My cousin Jason has always been the rational type, the kind of person who doesn't scare easy, doesn't believe in ghosts, and prefers facts over feelings. So when he told me this story, he looked genuinely disturbed. Jason worked as a flight operations manager for nearly 11 years. His job wasn't flashy. He wasn't flying planes or giving orders on the runway. He was the guy in the back room making sure the numbers matched the reality. He cross-checked boarding lists, weight distribution, fuel calculations, crew assignments, every tiny detail that makes a flight safe. In 2019, Jason was overseeing a regional red-eye flight from Phoenix to Portland. It was a quiet night. The airport was mostly empty due to weather delays earlier in the day. The flight, operated by a lesser-known carrier, was scheduled for 1:10 a.m. Everything was running behind. He remembers the night clearly because things started going wrong early. The flight had switched aircraft last minute due to a mechanical issue, so Jason had to redo the seating plan and reissue all boarding passes within minutes. There was a sense of urgency, but nothing abnormal. The aircraft used was a smaller Airbus with a two-seating configuration. Total seats, 50. Booked passengers, 43. A light load which made the late-night flight even smoother. Passengers boarded. The ground crew confirmed door closed at 1:18 a.m. Jason was about to sign off and go grab a coffee when the head flight attendant called him via radio. Jason, our head count is showing 44 passengers on board. Manifest says 43. Can you confirm? He double-checked the digital log. 43 passengers exactly. He ran a live check on scanned boarding passes. All showed 43 as well. No more. No less. He responded, "It's likely a miscount. Happens sometimes. Recount real quick." The attendant came back 5 minutes later. Her voice this time, less casual. "We recounted 3 times. There are definitely 44 people on this plane. One of them is in seat 17A. Jason frowned. "Let me check." When he opened the seating layout on his system, a chill ran down his spine. 17A wasn't assigned. It was marked unused during check-in because a couple had changed seats at the last minute and left that one vacant. According to the manifest, no one should be sitting in 17A. Jason asked the flight crew to confirm physically. They walked row by row, passenger by passenger. Everyone matched a name on the system, except for the man in 17A. He was described as elderly, maybe late 70s, wore a dark overcoat and old-style black sunglasses at night. He didn't speak, didn't respond when they greeted him, just stared ahead, silently. One attendant noted she felt a sudden coldness in that row. Another complained of a sharp, metallic smell. One described the scent as something between old cologne and fresh dirt, like soil after digging. The co-pilot came out to observe. He later said the man's presence felt wrong. Not threatening, but hollow. Like he wasn't really there, he said. Like a memory pretending to be a person. Jason now took this seriously. He instructed the crew to verify the man's ID and have him deboard before takeoff. The flight attendants went back down the aisle. Seat 17A was empty. No sign of the man. No bag, no trace. Just a folded boarding pass placed on the tray table. Jason instructed them not to touch it. When the plane returned 2 days later, he personally checked the seat. What he found rattled him. The boarding pass was still there, untouched. It looked aged, as if it had been printed 20 years ago. It wasn't in the airline's modern template. The ink was slightly faded. The name on it was Name M. Elias, Seat 17A. Date issued, March 14th, 1996. Jason sat at his terminal in disbelief. He pulled up records, cross-checked archives. After nearly an hour of searching, he found a chilling match. M. Elias had been a passenger on the same Phoenix-Portland route in 1996. That flight crashed shortly after takeoff, killing all 47 people on board. There were no survivors. The final manifest from that crash listed a passenger named Michael Elias, seat 17A. Jason contacted the airline's safety division, and within a week, that aircraft was permanently reassigned. The next time it went in for maintenance, seat 17A was removed from the configuration. He later told me that this wasn't the first time strange things had been reported in that row. Over the years, multiple flight crews had mentioned a quiet old man in 17A who never speaks, unexplained cold drafts, electrical issues during that section of the flight, passengers reporting someone watching from the seat behind, only to find no one there. But this was the first time the manifest mismatch proved it. Jason quit the airline the next year, not because of burnout, not because of stress. He told me this: "It's not the ghost that scared me. It's the idea that something from a previous crash can still board our flights, that it has a name, a seat, a boarding pass, and that our system, built on logic and numbers, can't reject it." He hasn't flown since. Before you move on to the next terrifying story, make sure to subscribe, like this video, and share it with your friends. Your support keeps this horror journey alive. I'm not someone who believes in ghosts, or at least I wasn't, until that night. I work as a senior field engineer for a tech company. That means a lot of flying, a lot of solo travel, and a lot of late nights in unfamiliar places. I've flown so many times that planes feel more familiar to me than my own bed. This happened in December 2022 during the holiday season. I had to fly from Chicago to San Francisco for a quick client meeting. I booked a red-eye, altitude air flight 33. It was supposed to depart at 11:40 p.m., but due to the heavy snow, it didn't take off until around 1:20 a.m. The airport was dead quiet. Most people just looked exhausted. You know that weird silence in airports at night? That kind of silence that feels too still? That's how it was. When I boarded the plane, I found my seat, 13B, middle row. I sighed when I saw it. I always prefer the aisle. But then I noticed something odd. Both 13A and 13C were empty. In fact, most of the row was empty. I chalked it up to the delay in the holiday season. Maybe people had canceled last minute. As we lifted off, I plugged in my noise-canceling headphones and leaned back. The cabin was dim, and almost everyone had already gone to sleep. I closed my eyes, not really tired, but wanting to rest. About 20 minutes into the flight, I felt a very soft tap on my left arm. It was gentle, barely a touch. I opened my eyes, slightly annoyed, thinking it was the person next to me trying to get by. But I froze when I looked over. There was a woman sitting in seat 13A, the window seat. I swear she hadn't been there before. She wasn't there during takeoff. I would have noticed, but now there she was. She was pale, almost bluish in the cold cabin light. Her hair was dark, long, and looked wet. She wore a thin, vintage-looking dress like something from the 1940s, light beige with lace trim, totally out of place for the snowstorm raging outside or for a flight in general. Her posture was rigid. She sat perfectly still, facing the window, eyes wide open, not blinking, just staring out into the night. I stared for a moment, unnerved, then gave a polite, nervous smile. She didn't move, didn't blink, no acknowledgement. I turned away, trying to ignore the icy feeling building in my chest. Maybe she was just a quiet person. Maybe she boarded while I dozed off, though I didn't remember falling asleep. But something felt wrong. The air felt heavier, colder. A few minutes later, the flight attendant came by with the drink cart. She leaned toward me and said, "Drink, sir?" "Just a Coke, thanks," I replied. As she handed me the cup, she glanced toward the woman beside me, then back at me, then toward the seat again. "Wait, is someone sitting there?" she asked. I turned to look. The seat was empty. I blinked, my mouth opening slightly. She was just right there. The attendant looked confused, but not scared. More like she'd heard this before. She leaned in a little and said quietly, "You're in seat 13B, right?" "Yeah." "There's no 13A on this aircraft. That row doesn't have a window seat. Check." She pointed at the seat panel beside me. I leaned forward. There was no 13A, just the plane wall. I hadn't noticed before because the cabin was dark and I had assumed someone had their shade down. My head started spinning. I know there was a woman there. I saw her. I felt her tap me. She was real. I couldn't explain it, but something was off. Then, halfway through the flight, it got worse. I had just finished my drink and was staring ahead, trying to rationalize what had happened. The lights in the cabin flickered for a second, just long enough to cause some unease. People shifted in their sleep. One baby cried softly and was soothed by a parent. Then silence again. And then I saw her again. 3 rows ahead, in the aisle. Just standing there. Her wet hair hung down in strands. Her skin looked even paler now, almost glowing in the dim cabin light. She was staring directly at me, not blinking, not moving, not breathing. I wanted to scream or stand or call the flight attendant again, but I couldn't. My body felt locked, frozen. She turned slowly without moving her feet and walked toward the front of the plane, right into the cockpit door, which opened and closed. I slammed the call button. No one responded. A few minutes later, the co-pilot casually stepped out of the cockpit and spoke with a flight attendant near the front. They laughed about something. Everything looked normal, but I sat there, completely paralyzed. When we landed in San Francisco, I waited. Let everyone leave first. The lights came back on. The aisle filled with sleepy passengers grabbing their bags. I turned back to look at the row behind me, and there, in the seat directly across the aisle from mine, was that same thin dress, folded neatly, as if it had been left there for someone to pick up. There was a faint damp mark on the seat cushion. I approached the flight attendant at the exit and asked quietly, "Has anything strange ever happened on this flight?" She gave me a long, tired look, then said, "We call her the Lady of 13A, but the seat doesn't exist. Never has." I asked, "Has she ever done anything to anyone?" She looked me straight in the eyes. "She only appears to people sitting alone." This happened to me about 3 years ago, and to this day, I'm not sure if I experienced something supernatural or if my mind played tricks on me, but deep down, I know what I saw. I was flying from Denver to Seattle on a late-night domestic flight. It wasn't my first flight by any means. I'm a software consultant and travel often for work. I had taken dozens of flights before, and I always found nighttime flights peaceful. Quiet cabins, dim lights, soft engine hum, it used to calm me. Used to. The boarding gate was half empty. Only around 30 passengers in total boarded Flight 237, which was odd for a Friday night, but I didn't think much of it. I was glad, honestly. It meant more space and more chances of getting a row to myself. I ended up in seat 23A, window seat, left side of the aircraft. To my relief, no one sat in the middle or aisle seats in my row. The whole back section of the plane felt strangely empty. Not just empty, but still, like the air itself wasn't moving. After takeoff, the cabin lights dimmed and everyone settled in. A few people had headphones on, some were reading, and others, like me, just gazed out the window into the vast dark sky. About 40 minutes into the flight, I started to feel a strange sensation. It wasn't fear exactly, but like I was being observed, watched. You know that feeling when someone's eyes are on you? That quiet pressure? I tried to ignore it. Maybe I was just tired. Then I noticed something odd. From the corner of my eye, I saw a man sitting in the very last row across the aisle. I hadn't seen him during boarding, and I was pretty sure he wasn't there earlier. He was wearing a brown suit, old-fashioned, like something from the 1950s, neatly pressed. A matching fedora rested on his lap. His hands were clasped neatly on top of it. He sat upright, too upright. Perfect posture, perfectly still. His eyes were open, fixed straight ahead. No blinking, no movement, just there. I tried not to stare. Maybe he was just a quirky old man. Maybe I was overthinking it, but something about him felt wrong. I got up to use the restroom at the back of the plane, and as I passed by him, I noticed the air grew suddenly colder. Freezing even, like stepping into a refrigerator. My arm hair stood up, and I felt a shiver crawl down my spine. When I exited the restroom about a minute later, the man was gone. I looked left, right, checked both aisles. I even peeked a bit toward the front of the plane, but he wasn't anywhere. All the nearby rows were empty. I returned to my seat, confused and uneasy. Maybe he went to the restroom after me, but no one passed me in the narrow aisle. Maybe he changed seats? But why silently, and to where? I asked the flight attendant casually, "Hey, do you know where that gentleman in the brown suit went? He was in the last row just now." She paused. Her expression went blank for a moment, then turned cautious. "Sir, that row's been empty the whole flight," she said. I laughed awkwardly. "No, I definitely saw someone there. Just now, brown suit, fedora. He was sitting straight up." The color drained from her face. She leaned in a little and whispered, "You're not the first person to mention him." "What do you mean?" I asked. She took a breath and looked around nervously. "We've had a few passengers, always on this route, say they saw a man in a brown suit sitting in that same seat, always alone, always still. But there's never any record of him on the manifest." I felt cold all over. "Is it a prank? Or some kind of ghost story? She shook her head slowly. I don't know what it is, but everyone describes him the same way, and he always disappears mid-flight. I spent the rest of the flight wide awake, scanning every aisle, every seat again and again. Nothing. No sign of him. But something strange happened when we landed. As we taxied toward the gate and passengers stood to retrieve their luggage, I stayed seated and counted every person walking out, one by one. I had a clear view from the back, and I swear to you, I saw a fedora resting on one of the empty seats. No one touched it. No one claimed it. When I got up to look again, it was gone. I reported the incident. The airline never followed up. I even emailed them twice. No response. Ever since that night, I've taken the train or driven whenever possible. And if I absolutely have to fly, I never sit near the back. But sometimes, when I look down the aisle, just as the lights dim, I swear I still catch a glimpse of someone sitting straight up, watching.